This meeting is the Finance and Administration Committee of the Solid Waste Authority. Today is April 16, 2026, and it's 1 p.m. Our invocation will be led by Mr. Ide.
Everyone, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for all your gifts. This body is meeting to consider the business of the Solid Waste Authority in Horry County. We ask your assistance in giving us the wisdom to make good decisions that are pleasure in your eyes as well as in the residents of the Horry County. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen.
What about the edification, Mr. Kennedy?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming. We have one of our board members in the audience, Ms. Creech, Pam Creech. Thank you for coming, Ms. Creech. Approval of agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved properly second. Opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
So on this agenda today, we're talking about preparation of the federal 27-28 operating budget, capital budget changes. Ms. Pam?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Just before I get started, just kind of wanted to explain a little bit on this, as we've never really had to go through and make some changes like this. The budget we presented to you as a staff back at the budget workshop, we presented in the same format with the same information that we have for the 37 years that I've been here. There were not any problems with that budget by any means. So these changes don't reflect a problem with our budget. Like I said, I just want to make sure that that was understood. But the Solid Waste Authority is going to be facing new growth and development changes within, the next several years. And so therefore, it was necessary to make some changes to make sure that we had everything in place as we move forward and, to face, to be able to be ready for those changes. So that's kind of where these changes in our budget are coming from. I just want to make sure that that's kind of understood. Like I said, I don't want anybody to feel like we didn't prepare a competent budget, because we did. As a staff did an outstanding job working on the budget this year, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. So I just want to start by kind of going through. I've got it highlighted in the packet, anything that was changed or and why, and then I can kind of explain to you why we made those changes. Well, I've got the pages numbered, begin on page 1. As you can see, the interest earnings. I mentioned to you during the budget workshop that was, of course, a little bit of a concern, because we never know exactly where we're going to be on that. We will be using some of our designated funds, probably maybe a little bit more than we have in the past, because we do have some landfill gas projects and we have the leachate tanks and things like that we know we're going to have to complete this next year. So therefore, we did make a slight adjustment to interest earnings by $200,000 for this next year.
What are we earning, sorry, Mr. Chairman. What are we earning this year?
I can't say right off the top of my head. I don't have that figure right off the top of my head. I know 1.8 million is about where we'll end up at the end of this year. We'll probably have a little bit more than that because we just actually put another $7 million into investments. They just pulled $7 million more out of our bank account. So we'll probably end up a little bit higher than what we anticipated. But so yeah, we're going to exceed our budget for this year quite a bit. But I can get that information for you.
Because we're splitting it between operations and other accounts.
For the interest?
Right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For funds we transferred into operating accounts.
Yes, sir. On page 2, as you'll see, where we made that adjustment, that $200,000 adjustment for interest earnings, we had to offset that somewhere in our operating budget. And so therefore, we made the decision to lower our rate stabilization, or our contingency funds, really is what they're called. Those are just those funds that if necessary, if something came up during the year that was unexpected. One year, I think we used it for some hauling that we had to do. We have to come back to the board, get their approval to utilize those funds. It's just some contingency funds, not necessarily earmarked for anything in particular, just for those unexpected things that may come up next year. We just felt like that was a better fit to reduce that versus going in and trying to maybe raise the tipping fee another, 25 cents. We just felt like that was a good area because we know we've got some money in a fuel contingency, we've got our unrestricted capital, we've got other areas covered, so we felt like that we were safe to use that. We haven't had to use that, knock on wood, in several years. So anyway, so we reduced that by the 200,000.
And that would enable us to do as well as to balance the two.
That's right, yes, sir.
So it was a balance offset.
It was a balance, absolutely, yes, sir. Those are the
Sorry,
only,
Mr. Chairman, I'm speaking out of order.
those are the only two operating budget changes that we have. The rest of the changes are all in our capital budget. So beginning on page 3, this is just a summary of our capital budget. As you can see on the bottom of the page, you'll see where we've broken out on there, the unrestricted, the allocation from unrestricted. That is what we can always refer to those E items. We have a long laundry list of what we consider our E items, and it's more always been our want list. Not necessarily what we're going to get, items that we would like to have that meet that capital requirement. And so therefore, and we've always, like I said, we put them in there sometime, most years, like I said, we've never bought very many of them, but it's there if we need to, because if it's not in our budget, we don't purchase it. And so therefore, we've always encouraged staff to keep that list going of those items that they might need or, might have to have for the next year. So, like I said, absolutely, we've never been able to fund every item in that E, never have been. So what we did is we broke it out this year. We have what we actually have in that unrestricted. Which we actually have budgeted $650,000. So that part we do have funded. Of those E items, $650,000 of it is funded. The unfunded portion is the $4.9 million. So we just took and broke it out. Same thing for 28. That's currently what we've got in the budget to be funded, and the rest is unfunded.
We also made some adjustments that weren't highlighted. Operations was changed from $64,818,500 to $43,900 to $500 in the upper.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry, say that again?
Operations under capital budget disposal and recycling operation in the upper category.
Yes,
It
sir.
wasn't highlighted, we made a change here.
Right, yes, sir, I was gonna get to that when we got to the actual sheet, yes, sir. But absolutely, that was changed as well. But that was kind of pointing this out here so that you could see on here what we did as far as that goes.
But that had to be adjusted also to balance it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you can. If it's unfunded, why is it here? Why do we list it?
Well, and that's a good question. Like I said, I think, we've always kept that list of items. For us to go back and try to determine of that laundry list of E items, what we actually might purchase next year or what we actually need, absolutely, I guess we could. We could absolutely go back and eliminate almost $5 million of it. But our philosophy has been in the past that we put it in there, and that way it's there. We keep a track, like I said, we monitor during the year how much of that E money we've spent, so we don't ever overspend what we've got budgeted, of course. But we've always had the philosophy that if it's not in the budget, then you're not able to purchase it. So if we come up and we don't have the light tower in there, and they need a light tower this year, then we have to come back, we have to get board's approval to make a change to our budget. I don't know that it would necessarily require a reading to the county because, like I said, it's not changing our overall funding, but it is changing what's in our budget, what the board approved. Because when the board approves that capital budget, they're approving us to purchase those items. Absolutely they are, if funding's available. And so, like I said, it's always been I guess I hate to say a wish list item list, it has been. But if the board would prefer that we take that and bring it down into what actually is funded, we can definitely work on that. That's something we can absolutely make that change.
Put it in unfunded. Does that interfere with anything in the future, like bonding or anything?
And I'd have to ask, I refer to Barry. If we have it listed as unfunded, separated like this, does it impact our bonding?
I would suggest not. It's typical as we prepare our budget to include in that a presentation about the things we're looking at in the future, even if it is unfunded. I think it just gives the reader potentially a better perspective of what all the needs are, but that's a regular occurrence that we include in our budget reports.
Thank you.
Good
Okay.
question. Another point, if you remember what we went through on the shredder, it had been listed, and this E is unfunded. We're gonna transfer the funds. Listed in the budget, unfunded. We had to go through that whole rigmarole, get to the point that we could purchase.
It's always good, though, for the board to be informed of those referrals that you're making, so that it's clear in our minds exactly what you're intending. So this exercise is really helpful.
Good. I'm going to jump over to page 8. This is probably our biggest, adjustment to the budget. If you remember, when we had our budget workshop, we talked about our future landfill expansion, mitigation, construction. We had almost $20 million in there for that. Of course, we knew that there was no way we were going to be able to fund that. We knew that we would be looking at bonding to be able to fund that. Of course, we don't know. We don't know if we'll get approval for this next year. We don't know if we get approval, what we'll get approval for. We don't know, and there's a lot of unknowns. There's a whole laundry list of unknowns, of course. And so, like I said, I think the best case scenario for us was to go ahead and take that out at this time, since we don't know, we're not able to fund it, we don't, like I said, until we know more. And so what we did is, you'll see on this page, we ended up leaving $300,000 in there for the landfill expansions, just some consulting and engineering, so that we would have that in place, because we are working with consultants to help us through the process. So absolutely, we wanted to have a little bit of money there to cover that. We will come back to you, the board, as well as county council, to make a budget amendment if necessary, if we were to receive any kind of, update on approval, cost, anything like that. We have that option. So if we see that it will fall into this next year's budget, that's exactly what we'll do. We'll amend our budget, it'll go through council as it should and get approval at that time. If it doesn't happen this year, and we know it'll something we may start the following year, in next year's budget process, it'll be included at that time. So, not something that's, off the table, it's just not in here for this year. That was the biggest change. So that lowered our overall capital budget to the, if you can see on page 9, the overall capital budget, is now on the $47,172,500.
The prior figure was 88,500.
All right, yes, sir. Over on page 10, I've just got highlighted, of course, in the funding sources. As you can see, the landfill construction fund then reduced to the $10,933,000. Again, I have it broken out for the E-money, as you can see what's funded and what's unfunded.
We had 31 million in there, and this is adjustments to make them balance.
Yes, sir. On page 11, you'll see the same thing. We actually also again reduced our landfill construction. We removed what we had in there for the construction phase of it. So that brought the landfill construction down to the $1,040,000. Then we broke out what was funded and unfunded on the E-money. Brings the overall capital for 2028 down to $3,569,799. And that was originally $20,761,369. We did not make any changes to 29, 30, or 31 in the overall totals. On page 15, these are, page 15 through page 23 are our designated funds. These are the funds, of course, that we set aside to cover these capital projects. And we went through here and we made some adjustments and some changes so that none of these funds reflected a negative balance. On the first page, on closure, it was in, I think, 2030 that we actually could possibly go into a deficit. So as you see, I put a transfer from post-closure funds, as we've done in the past before. Between closure
This
and
doesn't
post-closure.
authorize that, it just projects the possible need.
That's exactly right, yes, sir. It's just a projected need. These balances change so much that majority of this is just projected, absolutely. Page 16 is the same thing, it's just showing that actual transfer from post-closure to closure. And again, it's projected. If you remember the last time we built a cell, we projected a much larger transfer from post-closure to construction and closure that wasn't necessary. So by the time we get to year 2030, more than this may not be necessary either.
This is the offsetting transfer.
Yes, sir. That's
Again,
correct.
make a balance.
On page 17, of course, this is where you see the largest change. As you can see again, updated the figures based on the changes we made to our capital, or we removed the landfill expansion, mitigation, and construction. So it changed FY 27 expenditures and FY 28 expenditures. Also down at the very bottom in year 31, after talking to the engineers, that's the next time that they anticipate us going up on a amount we set aside for closure, post-closure, and landfill construction. And of course, we always put the money into construction until we aren't building any more cells. So at that time in 2031, we'll actually go up another, I think it's another, what, $1.25? $1.25. So I just updated that as well. And again, that hopefully we won't have to do it sooner, but that's what they're saying as of right now. That will be the year we may increase that.
How do you project? I mean, what mechanism do you use to project?
Well, the engineers have a mechanism that they use to tell us that, and right now they're trying to use it every 5-year projection to possibly go up every 5 years. And it's based on a lot of different criteria. It's based on our actual capacity. It's based on the tonnage we receive each year. It's also based on the cost of the projects that we have going on that affect the closure, post-closure, and construction. All of those things kind of factor into that analysis as determining, so that therefore we can meet the needs when necessary. That way we'll have the money put aside for closure when necessary and post-closure. So it's a whole calculation that they look at every year. It's that long spreadsheet that we talk about all the time.
If you've got your pink book, it's page 95, there's significant changes, but as you said, they're just changes in assumptions.
Right, yes, sir.
They utilize figures based on actual project costs
Oh,
that
yes.
we have had. Bid situation on landfill construction. Big jet collect, all those types is based on historical model. Of course, we know what that is today. It's a WAG, with everything like it is,
But as decision makers, we need to hear those assumptions so that we can plug those in for our own understanding. It helps us to see your
Understand?
path of getting there.
Yes, sir.
It's a big help. Thank you.
On page 18 is our equipment replacement fund. And if you remember, when we went through the, budget book, of course, we were looking at it possibly being in a deficit, at the end of '27. And a lot of that has to do with just the format that we previously have used. I don't normally true up the expenditures for '26 until the end of '26. However, I went through and I did an estimate on where we possibly could be on expenditures for the end of '26, just to give this a little bit closer view on not hitting a deficit. If you look at FY '27, we've got $16 million, over $16 million in, capital for equipment replacement. I can't think of a year that we've ever even come close to that. We're lucky if we've spent $3 million in a year on equipment. Now, yes, I do know that we've got 2 compactors for this next year that I feel quite certain that we will be purchasing this year, because we're trying to put them on a 4-year cycle, as you remember us talking about. So we probably will see a little bit more this year, but the way we look at our equipment, just because it's budgeted, we do not buy it. You know, we look at it from year to year based on what the need is, when it's needed, if we can push it out another year or 2, especially vehicles. You know, like I said, Richie and staff do a phenomenal job to take care of the equipment so that we get the most life out of that equipment that we can. Absolutely. So, yes, we've got 16 million budgeted. I can't see us ever even coming close to that. Like I said, yeah, I update you try to remember to update you every quarter on what we've spent on capital, and so it's very minimal.
But we don't want to over-reserve either.
No,
We don't want to extrapolate the budget to an unreal recognizable
right.
amount.
So that was the biggest change on page 18, just to,
And I would urge you to stay ahead of the power curve on your equipment. Don't wait till it breaks. Oh, you know, I can't, you know, nobody knows better than you all. Just stay ahead of the curve.
We're trying to do that. But if it looks like we're getting too far in front of the power curve, then we're talking about what the staff was talking about.
My confidence in your reasonable is just.
And if we don't need it, we don't buy it.
I do want to point out that both 17 and 18 vary in paper representation from the one that was sent.
I'm sorry, sir, say that again?
17 and 18 that are in the paper presentation vary from the one that's in the report that was sent by Dropbox. Significant changes. The only change is highlighted the $2,500 transfer in and out on the report that was transmitted to us on Dropbox. The paper one represents a far more number of changes and assumptions than were represented in our Dropbox presentation.
Which page?
Show it to you. 17 and 18 are different in this representation than in this representation. This is the Dropbox page.
Okay, now you're looking at a different one, you're looking at post-closure. Go to page 7, this is 17, is landfill construction, that's post-closure, keep going. Here's 16. That's 16, this is 17. That should be the same, it is the same, yes, sir.
I'm glad you're able to do that. So I was looking at it thinking, this
Okay.
is not jiving.
Okay, so that's okay, I thought I didn't have the same page as yes, sir, that's same, yes, sir.
Thanks.
On page 19, again, I just tried to update what we anticipated our, could possibly be our, additions, I'm sorry, our, update our additions for future, I think that, yeah, additions for landfill, future landfill construction. No, for future construction. No, I'm sorry, I highlighted the wrong thing there, excuse me. It should have been the expenditures for future construction and development, which is, when I say future construction and development, this is our general construction and development. This is roads, buildings, things like that, infrastructure here on the landfill, and I apologize, I highlighted the wrong thing. tried to bring that down to where I thought we would actually might spend this year. We are looking at, like I said, just some small things out there, so I did reduce that as well. I get that more in line with where I think we'll actually end up. There's no change on page 20 or 21. Page 22, which is our OPEB obligation. In the past, I'll be honest with you, we've put a figure in there for each out year because we really have no idea where we'll end up each year because there are ins and outs. We lose people, we gain retirees, we change health insurance costs, different things like that can impact it. So what I did was I took a look at where we anticipate that we will end up at the end of this year for 26. And then I left the other years blank because I hate to overstate it by putting something in there. From year to year, our cost has been about $65,000. That's been, we've saved somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. So I could put that in there for those years, but again, I don't want to overstate or understate where I think we can be. It's something that we will true up every year. And so that way you'll be informed each year where we are. But I can tell you, like I said, that's normally where our cost has been, around that 40 to 60,000. Last page I have for you is on 24, which is the unincorporated collection system. And the only change on there was in their land improvement and equipment outlay. And that just has to do with, like I said, the county, like I said, this is truly their budget. We manage it for them. However, we had some costs in there for some projects and things that they had already had money set aside for. And when they took a look at what they actually were spending each year, it was a little bit closer to the $800,000 between those two line items. So we just were truing that up based on what they asked us to kind of put in there. So that really is, I hate to say it's not our change, it's really theirs, but, so that's the only change with that. That is all I have for you, and I would be more than happy to go back to or answer any questions that you have on anything. We feel very comfortable with what we have here for you. We want you all to as well. And like I said, it's my understanding that this will actually be, hopefully for first reading Tuesday, maybe at the workshop. County Council, and then hopefully flow along with the rest of the second and third reading with the County Council.
Amen. General, any more questions or concerns?
Mr. Chairman, Barry Spivey, if I could ask you, you were showing us after the presentation of our budget where balances didn't true up because we were overcommitting by adopting the budget in its form. The adjustments we've made now are intending to true it up so those balances were even. Are you finding anything in your review of this document that we haven't made that objective?
No, I would say what is being presented meets that objective directly, and it's something we would echo to County Council at the retreat as well.
Fantastic, that's what I want to be sure of. And thank you for all the work that you've done to make it more concise and also to explain the assumptions you were making and what was being represented. They weren't. It's not that you were doing it wrong, you were doing it in a fashion that it wasn't totally transparent. So thank you for making it clear what assumptions you were making to derive the numbers that you presented. And now that it trues up, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we recommend to the board to adopt this at our next board meeting.
All right, Mr. Frazier, recommendation? Yes, he made a motion. Group second. All right. Thank you, ma'am, for doing such a fine job.
Thank you, sir.
We'll make this recommendation to the full board at our next meeting. Any additional questions?
You have a question, all right? Before we go. I've been getting tons of emails from consultants wanting to help us fund the expansion, okay? And most of which I'm ignoring. But recently, and I think I sent you a copy of it, Recently, I got one in that mentioned that if we had paid any tariffs under the recent tariff increases, that the courts have ruled that they were illegal and that we are potentially entitled to get them back. Do we know if we paid any tariffs during the past?
And we don't buy directly like that. Now, Cat might can charge something and cost increases like that you'll never know it was a tariff. But I get those things too, and probably 4 or 5 a day offering some kind of financial package to help us through the hard times. But we're getting a lot of that kind of stuff now. Have to go through it and see what affects us, and
I would assume that any equipment that is not manufactured in the United States, price included a tariff.
What's been determined is that if they are successful, such as Caterpillar, in getting the refund, they're not entitled to pass that on to their customers. Some of them may choose to, but they are not directed to then rebate any of their customers. I'd see an adjustment from Caterpillar, but it's not likely. Courts are right now reviewing which direct benefits go to, but not what the ultimate.
I understand that. I don't know if we're considered to be
A primary.
the person of import, or whatever they call
now I've got that on my desk too.
it. Okay.
And I often wonder how the Solid Waste Authority in Conway, South Carolina, gets something from somebody in Los Angeles, California, that would be willing to help us with payroll finances. But we're getting more and more of that.
So then in conclusion, then we'll make this recommendation to the full board at our next board meeting. Can we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
I have it. And therefore, no more question, comment? We'll adjourn this